Hey folks, today I'll be covering the legendary Texas behemoth, the Colt Walker. Let's go check it out. Alright, here we go. The big gigantic Colt Walker. Now this thing is made by Uberti, this version here. So these pistols are huge, right? They weigh a solid 4.5 pounds or so. They have a 9-inch barrel. They're a half octagon. The cylinder is so big that we can cram in up to a 60 grain charge, although that will beat up your gun. So being a Uberti, of course, it's finished very nicely. We've got very nice color case hardening. Nice details like the 1847 US marking. The engraving is very good on the cylinder. And it's true to form in that there's only one safety notch on the pistol, which was true of the originals. Let's see if we can find it. Here it is. There's only one little safety tab on this model. Another interesting mark is this is noted, or it was marked, as the model USMR, as you can see there. The USMR being the United States Mounted Rifles, which were the units to which these revolvers were issued. So let's go ahead and take it apart just a little bit. We'll pop the wedge out. And these tend to be a little sticky sometimes. So we'll put her on half cock and we'll place it in the rammer between chambers. And then we'll try to knock it off. There we are. So as you can see, it comes apart just like any other Colt percussion revolver. Pretty straightforward. You've got the wedge pin just like any other one, except that this one's on kind of the opposite side. So where the rest of the Colts come out this side, this one comes out the other side. We've got the big giant massive cylinder with a correspondingly huge arbor pin. As you can see, it's a pretty typical Colt design, right? One of the major differences between this and the later ones, however, is other than the size, this one lacks a cap channel cut out here in the face of the recoil shield. And that tends to lead to some hang-ups when you're trying to fire the gun and you want to get rid of an expended cap. There's no place for that expended cap to travel as it goes out of the gun. Unlike on later models, it came out really just in the next year or two, like the 1849 pocket. I'll show you this example. If you haven't seen my video on the pocket model, go check it out. But as you can see, the wedge comes out the opposite way from Walker. And we'll do the same kind of disassembly here. Pop it apart. And look how absolutely tiny that cylinder is by comparison to the Walker. But you can see, and I was pointing on the wrong side, I guess, but you can see there's a little cutout here on this side of the recoil shield. And that cutout is not present, so we can show it to you, on the Walker. And it makes a big difference in terms of that reliability when cycling the gun. So at first, essentially, these are the two size options you had with Colts. The pocket model, or something like a Dragoon, or a Walker like this. So you had extremely big and little bitty. That was until, of course, 1851, and the Navy models were introduced. Like this one. Of course, this is my Pieta. And we can pop out the wedge pin, just the same as the rest of them. And once again, it comes out that side. We'll take her apart, and we'll just show you, to give you an idea of scale here, the size of these things. Right, so now we have kind of the small, medium, and large size frames, and small, medium, and large size calibers and barrels, right? 31, 36, and 44. So early on, right in the 1850s, when we had the Dragoon, which is only a little bit smaller than the Walker, you pretty much had these sizes, right? These frame sizes and so on. We'll do a little bit more size comparison. I'll try to give you another comparison of a sense of scale here. Let me put these back together. Right, and now you can see now that they're all back together, again, the absolute sheer mass of the Walker compared to the relatively light 1851, which clocks in about 2 pounds or so, and then the pocket, which is even lighter and smaller than that. So perhaps the strangest design choice that was made with the Walker, as well as a couple of the early Dragoon models, I believe through the first model Dragoon, was the use of what's called a V-spring. So instead of using a simple flat spring like on the later guns like this Navy, that's screwed into the kind of the front strap of the grip frame and goes up underneath the hammer, which, if you can see it, it sits on a roller here. So as you pull the hammer back, the roller engages a little trough in the spring, and it all works very smoothly and simply, and it's easy to take down for cleaning. On the Walker, you have this spring that's kind of hooked onto that front strap. So rather than using a screw, you have a hook here, and then it kind of loops around up underneath the hammer. So instead of having a roller, it fits into a slot on the bottom of the hammer. So that's kind of a strange choice, and I do kind of wonder about that. Like, why did Colt choose to do it this way? As you can see, we can cock the hammer back. You can see kind of the action of that spring versus the later ones. It's kind of interesting. It sort of bows out the back end of it here. It works fine. It works very smoothly. Right? There's really no difference in feel between this hammer and this one. Oops. But to take it apart properly, you have to get one of these or a similar wrench that has this right sort of size here. And this is an interesting tool. These are actually issued with the Walkers, by the Army. So you have kind of this hook here and a nipple wrench and also a screwdriver. This tool, however, is only really good, in my opinion, for holding the V-spring in place when you go to take the gun apart. To me, it makes a decent nipple wrench. Of course, it'll engage them, but there's way better ones out on the market, of course, than that. Like, for example, the Slicks wrench. I absolutely, if you shoot cap and ball revolvers at all, recommend that you get a Slicks wrench, because, man, this thing is outstanding. However, this is almost mandatory unless you want to go find a wrench of the right size. So, plus it has the cool factor maybe of being like a prop, right? It goes along with the Walker. But I'll show you how you might use this in taking the gun apart. You bring the hammer back to full cock, take the tool, place it over the spring, really at any point along the grip, and then we'll awkwardly let the hammer down. And now the spring's tension against our kind of hook there, and now it's off the hammer. So now it's much, much easier to now take out the hammer screw and disassemble the rest of the gun. However, you'll want to leave this tool in place, right? So as you're doing this, you have to remove your bottom screws from the front strap of the grip and so on. So you'll want to place the tool in such a way that it's out of the way of your screwdriver when you're working on the rest of the gun. One other kind of feature of the Walker that got phased out with better design over the years with Colts is that you have kind of this oval-shaped cylinder stop. Okay, and so some of the early Colt guns had this, not just the Walker, but the early Dragoon models, as well as some of the early 1851 Navies had oval stops. But that was eventually phased out and replaced with the much better method of using a square stop with kind of this lead cut that lets the bolt travel more naturally into the lock position. And of course, you see that exact same cut being used on modern revolvers today. So one of those things worked really well, and one of those things doesn't. On the 1851 Navy and any other Colt revolver, like the pocket model I showed earlier, the lever latch is up here on the front, and there's a little sliding mechanism that locks into that, and that's pretty reliable and holds that lever up during firing quite well. On the Walker, pretty famously, that's not the case. You see there's nothing out here holding it on. Instead, there's a little hook you can see protruding out of the barrel here that fits into a slot here on the rammer. Okay, you can see the relationship with this little rounded bit will engage with a surface in here, right, and lock it up, but it will fall down on the recoil. Okay, unless you're shooting very light loads, that'll pop down on you. That'll fall into a chamber. So you'll see when you try to cock the gun again, it's locked up. If you're not paying attention, that'll grab your attention and go, wait a minute, flip that lever back up so you can keep shooting. And take our wrench off. So yeah, so that's kind of an oddball thing. And one of the fixes for that, of course, is to file the top of this surface so it's a little bit flattened, and that should hold that lever up under recoil. But I haven't done that. Instead, what I've done is I've 3D printed a solution, which is a little clip that slides over the barrel and the ramrod, and it leaves a little channel here so we can still see the sights well. So I just slip that over the end, and that is quite a reliable solution in my experience, because now instead of having the one point of contact, even if you file it down, you now have 2 points of contact holding the ramrod up, which makes that quite a bit stronger as far as keeping that up there and not letting it fall. So I have yet to actually have it fall under recoil using this little clip. And when you go to reload the gun, it's very simple. You just slide it off the top and load it. And once you're done, slide it back on. Should be quite unobtrusive, right, since it's out of the way of our sights, and it's a pretty low profile design to begin with. Okay, so with all that, I'm pretty sure I covered all the bases with the design quirks and my little solutions and things around it. Let's take it to the range and shoot it. So now let's load the Walker. 50 grains of 3F in each chamber, which means we're pouring two 25 grain spouts here. 1 and 2, and then we're going to place a round ball on top. Take off the clip and we'll ram it down in the chamber, and then we'll just repeat that process for all 6 chambers. Next, we'll cap the pistol, we'll go all the way around, and then we'll just press check them to make sure they're tightly fitted. And we're now ready to shoot.
Yeah, those fucking, bro. They're pretty pooped up. That's crazy. You're gonna really like shooting this, I think. Oh yeah, especially since you got the point of contact on the table and your shoulder, and you got an aim point. I might ask him if he wants to see it.
So let's stop and make a quick note here. You might have noticed in the range footage a lot of misfires and failures to fire and this kind of thing. And that's largely because of cap jams. I was having a bad day with cap jams where that cap gets pulled off the nipple and falls down into the channel here and gets flattened out and causes some problems. This is probably my least reliable cap and ball revolver. And that's saying something, because they're all a little bit unreliable. But this one in particular is extra unreliable for one reason or another. Now, conversely, the Ruger Old Army is probably my most reliable cap and ball. But keeping in mind too that this is a thoroughly modern design, whereas this is a thoroughly antiquated design. But this is part of the fun and the experience of shooting cap and ball revolvers. You're going to get weird little problems with them as you shoot that you have to kind of deal with and solve. And that's just what we have to accept when we shoot these guns, I think. And of course, there's various fixes and things that people have done to these to get them to run more reliably. But I've done pretty much none of them in this case, other than adding the slick shot nipples, which do help. But we still run into these problems, as you can see in the range footage. So I just wanted to call that out. Okay, now let's take a look at the target. Here I was smart enough to actually mark off the first group of shots, which are these upper ones, and this one here close to the 10 ring. And you can see that first group was pretty high, where the second group was pretty low. And that's just my adjustment, really, of aiming point, because all of these percussion revolvers shoot high. No matter which one you're shooting, they will all hit high. So at first I'm aiming kind of at the bottom of the black here, and then I moved it down towards the bottom of the paper itself, and then now we're hitting quite a bit lower in general, or at least in line with the black, and off to the right a little bit. I must have been gripping the pistol a little differently this time or something like that to account for that shift, right? Because we have center but high and then off to the right but lower. So I think it's just that my grip and change of stance or something like that maybe. This is a 20-yard target, pretty reasonably accurate. And as you can see from the range footage, I'm not shooting from a rest. I'm using a two-handed grip with this big giant pistol from a standing position at 20 yards. So pretty decent groups here, really. You know, they're roughly the size of a palm-sized group, something like that. Definitely battle accurate, right? Hope you've enjoyed this look at the Uberti Colt Walker. It's a big, giant, kind of cantankerous beast, but boy, is it a lot of fun. And if you'd like to check out my store at surlyspossibles.com, I'm also on Etsy and eBay. And if you'd like one of these ramrod clips, I sell them in packs of 2. I also have an assortment of other good stuff like paper cartridge boxes and in 44, 36, as well as 31, and a number of other sort of cartridge box related items and so on. So feel free to check me out if you like. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.